Here we go.
Hello and welcome to a special episode of Sonic Alchemy. I'm super stoked and excited and grateful to have the amazing Sheela Rahman, aka Souza, here for this episode. And before Sheila will introduce herself a little bit, I just want to share with you guys how I found out about Sheila and her work. Is actually funny because when I was in Costa Rica teaching an Ableton class with someone, he had solfeggio sound healing instruments in his Ableton browser. And I'm like, wow, man, like, where did you get that? And it was a mystery to us. And then I started researching, Googling, and then I found out about this Drone Lab pack that you can download free on Ableton. And there, Sheila has created like a bunch of super awesome sound healing instruments, like with solfeggio frequencies and all that stuff. And then I was like super intrigued. And then I started researching more, found out about her music, and found out about that she's also teaching. And so I became a student of her. And then my mind got blown, and I got deeper and deeper into the world of frequency research and specifically the work that Sheila has done. And I see her as like an ambassador, of the frequency research, or just in general of the consciousness of using frequency and harmonics and the understanding of the universal harmonic principles, not just for music, but it's specifically because this channel is focused on healing music. There's a big aspect that we can integrate in that in order to create more cohesive, coherent, healing, uplifting energy, supporting sounds and frequencies. And so I'm happy to give it over to you, Sheila. Such an honor to have you here.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much. It's such an honor to be here and to share all of this information. It's my life mission here on this planet at this time to educate people about the principles of harmonic resonance and how understanding these principles deeply allows us to use music as a tool for healing and inner harmony and inner coherence, which is, really the goal in this day and age, because we have all the forces in the universe working to distract us and create a sense of inner decoherence. And so it's up to us to become that strong and stable, coherent force from within. And it starts with every single system of reality basically needs to be rebuilt from the ground up into more coherence.
Oh,
And it starts with the most basic understanding of harmonic resonance through sound, through frequency, through harmonic resonance of sonic elements. And once somebody can really have a cohesive understanding of these principles of harmonic nesting, of systems being harmonically related to all the other parts of the systems, in order for a system to function in its most efficient manner with the least amount of energy lost in a system. And of course, I'm sure everyone has heard of cymatics at this point, but cymatics is literally the best way we can understand the principle of harmonic resonance, because we can see that if we just apply a frequency to matter, to sound, we create these beautiful geometric standing wave patterns. And this is the crux of our entire universe. Our entire reality is just a bunch of standing wave frequencies that we call matter. And everything we speak, everything we think, everything we act is creating an Akashic imprint that is literally a magnet for whatever is going to come into our field. And so teaching people the principles of resonating incoherent is just going to manifest more coherent situations, more synchronicities, and people will be able to live out their soul mission without losing energy. Like, that's the crux of this whole thing, is how can we conserve and direct our energy in the best possible way so we can live out our soul mission without having to continue these cycles and patterns over and over and over again. So,
Mm.
um, so I started working with the oscilloscopes several years ago and understanding how different numerical sequences create stable standing wave patterns in the ether and in matter. So it starts off observing different patterns in the oscilloscopes, which can then be used on different devices like a cymatics plate or even a hydroglyphs setup, which I am so excited about and I want to tell you all
Yeah,
about
I'm
as
curious.
well.
Never heard about it, but it sounds fascinating.
Oh, yeah.
Hydroglyph?
Yeah. So hydroglyphs, anyone can do it. You just go on Amazon or your local science shop and you buy petri dishes. Petri dishes, it looks like just like a little teeny tiny dish about that big. And you can fill just the bottom layer with water. And I've been doing tons of experiments with this lately. It's been blowing my mind. And the fact that anyone could do this is just incredible. But anyway, so you take a little petri dish with water, and then you do a control experiment where you put it in the freezer and then you look at that pattern. And normally, when you just do a control, it's a bit chaotic, there's not much structure. And then you you can there's like the sky's the limit with this, but for example, a tuning fork, you can just get a little tuning fork, and if you hit a tuning fork into the water and then you freeze it, the water will be restructured into this coherent toroidal beautiful pattern.
And you look at it with a microphone or microphone, microscope or
um you just observe it. It's very clear,
okay.
it's very clear.
So you don't
And
even need anything to amplify it, just the way it is. You can already see the
exactly.
structure changing. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I've been trying all different levels. Like I've been trying it with a torus and which is the electromagnetic coil, which
Hmm.
renders insane effects because that's a much stronger electromagnetic field that's being emanated into the water. But then I started dialing it down and saying, oh, what if I just use a tuning fork? And the effects were immense, just hitting
Mm.
it one time, and it's
Wow.
proof that you can restructure your water with just a tuning fork. And then I was like, oh, what if I don't have a tuning fork? What if I just chant into it? And guess
Mm.
what? A chant
Same
will
effect.
restructure the water into a coherent geometry.
Wow.
And guess what? Even a meditation or intention you focus into
Mm.
the
Hmm.
water will do it as well. So these are just basic experiments that show us that how powerful we are, how powerful our thoughts and our words and our intentions are in influencing the material world. It's
Amazing.
incredible.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. Um, so one of the things I've been doing extensively is cataloging which ratios create which geometries. And these sacred geometries are the fundamental units of creation. And many of us know that intuitively. We see these beautiful flower of life geometries and, different, very beautiful, coherent geometries. Our consciousness automatically is magnetized to it because we see some
Mhm.
aspects of truth in these shapes. And each shape has a different property. Each shape has a different ability to mold the ether in a different manner. And for anyone who is interested in this study, I highly recommend a book called Shape Power by Dan Davidson. And
Yeah,
he,
I can recommend it as well. Like you recommended it to me in one of the classes, and it's really mind blowing. And you can really see scientific proof of what Sheila just said, how geometry impacts the flow of ether. Yeah.
oh my goodness, It's incredible. It's basically this scientist, Dan Davidson, was doing a lot of scientific experiments with high-tech equipment. He had devices that could detect the magnetic field shifts, very subtle shifts in the magnetic field. And then he was creating different geometries, and he was showing that different geometries literally create these subtle shifts in the magnetic field.
Mhm.
And for example, the most basic example is anytime you have intersecting lines like a triangle, that creates a magnetic field that increases the magnetic field's density when you have intersecting lines. And now we can unpack like this whole the language from every single culture, these chants, each one of these words or sounds that are incanted into the ether are literally molding the ether and creating a very specific field of elementals. And that is so much power we have as humans to mold. And the deeper I get with this research and the deeper my understanding and my beliefs are that words program reality, the more the synchronicities are just off the charts. And it's a big responsibility. Like you have to be really careful because you think something, you look at something, you will literally create it.
Mhm.
So it's at this point where you're like, okay, I have to do a whole energy field recalibration and manage my thoughts. Don't let any negativity get in because
Mhm.
everything that gets into your precious field will get amplified. So, so yeah, but back to the coherent geometries. So I've been cataloging these different ratios of what ratio creates what geometry. And to explain that a little bit better, the ratio is a calculation or formula. So let's take the ratio 1.5 or 3/2. This ratio is the perfect fifth, which is the most famous ratio in all of time space because we see this ratio encoded into every layer of reality from the micro quantum world to the macro cosmic realm. For
Mhm.
example, the most common electron shell spin ratio is 1.5 or 3/2, 3 to 2. Our human body is laced with this ratio in all of the measurements, all of the proportions. This is such a common ratio. And again, there are many ratios. Of course, we have the phi ratio, 1.618. And again, each one of these ratios represents a different type of energy and a different geometry as well. Like, of
Mhm.
course, everyone's seen the Fibonacci spiral. That's an example of another type of geometry that influences every layer of reality. So if you take literally any number, so let's say you take the number 222, which I just happen to have a tuning fork with that frequency right here.
Mhm.
So let's say you have the number 222. In order to calculate the perfect fifth, you multiply 222 by 1.5, or you can do the calculation 222 times 3 divided by 2 gives you the
Mhm.
same answer. And the answer is 333.
Mhm.
And now you have two numbers, and these two numbers create the perfect fifth harmonic. So now what you could do, of course, there's many, many types of ways you could employ that ratio into a system, into any system of reality. But today we'll focus on the frequency aspect. So next thing you do is you convert these frequencies into, let's say, sine tones, for example. You could also use square waves, but so sine tones are I consider it to be like base units of reality in a lot of ways. And so if you convert 222 into a frequency, you are just converting it to 222 hertz. And then when you combine that with the 333 harmonic, and then you get a perfect fifth. Perfect fifth chord creates a pentagram in the ether.
Wow.
It's mind blowing.
Yeah.
And you can prove that not only with sine tones in an oscilloscope, but you can also prove it with two tuning forks into a microphone, into an oscilloscope. And I can actually show
Amazing.
you that a little bit later because I
Oh,
actually
yeah, let's
have
look at it.
the 222 and 333 right here.
Epic.
And I was doing these experiments the other day just to prove if you have the two tuning forks, you'll create the five petaled flower or five pointed star, depending on the angle you hold the tuning forks. And what I've noticed is the shape of the geometry comes through with tuning forks if you hold them at exactly 90 degrees to each other.
Wow.
90 degrees. So the angle, it's all about the angle. And this is the crux of the whole field of the research that I'm doing is the oscilloscope transcribes three different elements. There's an acronym FAT, FAT, frequency, amplitude, and time. So frequency would be the pitch, which would be the 222 hertz. Amplitude could also be considered voltage or pressure if you're working with a different type of wave propagation, you would use pressure. So in Ableton, that would be the amplitude level. So frequency, amplitude, and then three, which is one that most people who use the 2D oscilloscopes do not address, and that would be called time or phase angle. So there needs to be an X, Y, and Z axis in the polar coordinate graphing system of the 3D oscilloscope in order to unpack a three-dimensional image as opposed to a 2D sine wave.
And that's why we
So
have to put a
yeah.
delay after the tone generator, right? So that it creates this time component.
So that is a way that you can basically open up the geometry
Hmm.
because now you're seeing a flash sequence, which
Yeah.
is allowing you to see in between the lines of time. So there's the decay speed. So there's several different effects that will shift your ability to perceive the geometry. And I have a few more for you too that I'm so excited about that I recently tapped into. I'll just drop the names in real quick. Tremolo and ring modulator.
Ooh,
Yeah,
okay.
next level. I have it all ready to show you shortly. But
Mm.
yeah, so there's different effects that one could employ in order to observe properties of the geometry that is the way it's shifting the Aether. So there's going to be properties that are always going to apply to these specific ratios, like the pentagram always being a property of that ratio from some angles. So of course, if we have a shape we're looking at from the front, it's going to look like a pentagram. But
Hmm.
if as soon as we turn it to the side, it just looks like a straight line. And that's because there's different angles that we can observe any object from.
Hmm.
And that's an important um, perception to have when creating these geometries is that first, we work with the sine tones and the numerical relationships, and then we can start using effects Like from my research, I was just working with pure sine tones since like 2018. So for like
Hmm.
5 years, I was like, I just want to know everything I can know about sine tones before I take it up to square waves. And then just this
Hmm.
year, I was like, okay, time to bring in square waves.
Oh, so you did start with squares as well. They have a lot of
Yes.
overtones and harmonics, right? So then it gets more complex, or
Oh my goodness. Yeah. So there was some geometries I could not access with sine tones alone. But when I
yeah,
started combining a square wave and a sine tone, I got the first thing I got was the Vesica Pisces.
no way. Wow.
And yeah, that ratio is 2.14 square wave and a circle, which just metaphorically is an interesting concept because you have
Squaring the circle, yeah.
exactly, you have squaring the circle. And then you have 2.14, which is Valentine's Day, which is like
Mm,
two circles coming together, two
that's
energetic
beautiful.
beings coming
Yeah.
together. Um, and it's just incredible what geometries you
Mm,
can find when you hit the right combination. It's like unlocking the keys to a locker. It's really great. Um,
wow. I'm curious to
yeah.
see some of them, Sheila.
Yeah, I have
Mm,
one right here ready to go that I can show you in a couple minutes. And
okay, great.
I'll tell you about it a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know how I mentioned the perfect fifth being a pentagram? And when I say pentagram, you could also say a five-petaled flower because the pointiness of a star could shift into the softness of a flower if you shift the angle slightly.
Mm-hmm.
And the shape I'm most excited about is what I call the seed of light. And it's almost like a pair to go with the seed of life.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, I perceive the seed of life and the seed of light to be like a yin and yang, where the
Mm,
seed of life, which we've all seen in all of the spiritual shops, I perceive that to be literally a seed of life, a seed of like gravitational force that's binding us into the material and creating these beautiful life forms on planet Earth. So it's about life, it's about physicality. Whereas
mm.
the seed of light, which I'm going to show you in a second, and I'll explain the difference shortly. Maybe we could even have a photo on the screen. But so the seed of light would literally be a seed of light. So whereas you have one that's representing the physical, one is representing the elemental or etheric or spiritual realm. And the ratio to calculate the seed of light is 5. So not to confuse perfect fifth with fifth
Mm-hmm.
harmonic. So this is a distinction I try to explain to everyone because I had it mixed up for like a year and I didn't know
Mm,
the difference. But the
mm,
difference between a perfect fifth is the two frequencies are separated by 1.5. A fifth harmonic is separated by the power of 5. So a
mm,
multiple of 5. So you
mm-hmm.
take the first number and then you multiply that by 5 to get the second number. And that particular ratio of 5 to 1 is what generates the six-pointed star or six-petal flower or seed of light, which I'm going to show you. So yeah, let me do a little screen share and
Mm-hmm.
I will show you what I have here. Just give me one sec. Testing one, two.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, testing. Alrighty, so we are here in Ableton, and just a little quick explanation on a couple of these rows here. These are just a frequency. And so, for example, we have 125. That would be 125 hertz. And what calculation I was doing here would be multiplying by powers of 5, like I described. 25 times 5 is 125. 125 times 5 is 625. 625 times 5 is 3125. And then this would be a much higher multiple of that sequence, 15,625. And I will do a little quick demonstration of what this looks like in an oscilloscope. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to activate a couple of these frequencies, and then you can see the geometry shifting on the screen. So I'm going to turn off my audio for about a minute, and I'll do a little mini demonstration. Alrighty, here we go. Sorry, I just wanted to do a sound check. Can you hear that?
Yeah,
Can
I
you
hear
hear
this
this?
one.
Okay, just making sure. All right, here we go.
Wow,
Alrighty, so
that
that
was
was,
incredible.
yeah, and I don't know about you, but I noticed whenever I listen to these, it completely shifts my state of consciousness.
Completely, yeah. That's what I was
Completely.
about to say. Like I'm still landing, you know. I was like completely, yeah, beyond.
Right.
It
Yeah, so
was,
how does that make you feel?
um, it's a super strong sense of clarity,
Mm-hmm.
when to a degree that nothing even needs to be explained or there's no questions in that sense. It's ultra peaceful, and yeah, I just felt something was opening up, you know, to like a channel was opening up, and yeah, and at the same time, I was also still just amazed by the beauty of the patterns and the complexity and how it was like, yeah, just getting more complex and more intricate. And also, I was hearing additional sounds. That's why I needed to take off like my headphones to see if it's coming from the surrounding or if it's just like was modulated within my brain or consciousness or whatever. But I was hearing other tones as well, like that, like when he brought in the 15,000 hertz, then some like new tones started to appear as well, which was really interesting.
Yeah. Um, I have a theory that the high frequencies can help with tinnitus, or
Hmm.
at least temporarily.
Hmm.
But um, but yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing.
And how,
Yeah,
what do you
whenever,
experience when you?
yeah, I feel like you said a sense of clarity and a sense of like a lot of the chaotic frequencies of my brain literally becoming more coherent. And
Mhm.
maybe one day there would be a possibility to do brain scans of people while they watch and listen to this and show, because I can already feel it's like all my biological rhythms are more synced up and I feel more relaxed. I feel more
Mhm.
present and more clear.
You do this on a daily basis, right? Like that's all pretty much you do. Like you just put frequencies into the oscilloscope, play with the effects and the research, and then you're kind of like already, yeah, it's kind of your routine in that way, right? So your system is kind of like entrained or like overriding or like leaning more
Yeah.
towards the harmonious state than the chaotic state. And it's super powerful, right? It's just like that was like, I don't know, 10 seconds or like, I don't know, 30 seconds or something.
Mm-hmm.
And it shifted everything like so quickly.
I agree. And I feel like it's worthy of scientific research because some of the geometries make me feel different than
Mm-hmm.
others. And
Mm-hmm.
this particular one, it just has this like grounding and clarifying and relaxing, embodying energy to it. But there's other ones out there that they might have an activating effect and they might
Mm-hmm.
make me feel more stimulated. And
Mm-hmm.
this actually relates to how people program binaural beats. The binaural beats are based off of corresponding the measurement between two frequencies to the brainwave state measurement that a person wants to entrain with. So you have gamma, which would be like 20 to 30 hertz, which would be that activated state. So
Mm-hmm.
if someone wants to get work done and just get into that activated state, then they would employ these binaural beta wave effects, for example,
Mm-hmm.
which would basically be calculated by taking one frequency in the left and then mm, instead of doing a ratio, this would be subtracting 30 or however many brain waves that one wanted to create. So by doing that and then putting the other measurement in the other ear, so let's say you had 60 in one ear, then you would take 30 and put it in the other ear, then that would create 30 hertz that our brainwave would entrain with. And
Mm-hmm.
people do it most commonly, I think, with alpha waves because alpha waves generate the state that is ideal to function in our day to day. To function, a majority of our lives would probably be ideal in alpha because alpha involves the straddling of the conscious and unconscious mind, which allows us to have a foot in both worlds, meaning we're not in our unconscious, just being hypnotic, mind controlled, submissive, passive, docile creatures existing in our like delta waves all the time. We don't want to be in that state all the time, and we don't want to be in beta all the time, because that could create a lot of stress on the body if we're just constantly like in that activated working state. So the alpha state would be where you have the gateway to your unconscious mind and your creative mind open, but you also have the ability to function very highly in whatever it is that you're creating. So alpha wave is like the ultimate co-creator, conscious co-creator of reality state to exist on. And the alpha wave is about 8 hertz, which is the same as the Schumann resonance, which is about 8 hertz. So that 8 hertz is a great entrainment frequency to apply to oneself.
Okay, cool. That's awesome.
Yeah. So
And did you try to use both, like the binaural beats and the frequencies? Like,
yeah, you could definitely, for example, take 2 of these frequencies and put one in each ear. And there was an experiment I did a while ago that involved the binaural oscilloscope. And at the time I was working a lot as well with the Muse headset. So in the Muse headset, there's an open source app called Mind Monitor. And the Mind Monitor gives you just like a very raw brainwave data reading, as opposed to the Muse app, which is the meditation app that has a different function. So downloading that open source app, Mind Monitor, and using that with the Muse, it gives you a real-time brainwave reading of what each one of your brainwaves is doing. So, we have the delta, theta, alpha, beta, and gamma are the main ones. There's a few more for like meditating monks, like lambda, but yeah, those are the main ones. And you can see whatever it is that you're doing, what it's doing to your brainwaves. And so, this was probably a couple years ago that I was like really heavy on this research, just obsessively looking at how each thing I would do would shift my brain state. And so I did a bunch of experiments on, I would say like maybe like 30 people. And one thing I noticed was most people, including myself, are mostly operating a majority of their day-to-day lives in delta. Delta means you're operating from an unconscious, relaxed state. So this is a double-edged sword, and it's important and critical to understand that not one of these brainwave states is considered bad. Every single brainwave state is a different muscle that we can either entrain and wield with conscious decision making, or it will wield us, So being a Delta master is being a Jedi. Like if you who master your Delta waves, you have such high programming ability in reality and manifestation potential. It's off the charts, right? So being a master of Delta is a superpower. However, be a master of Delta, don't let Delta be a master of you. Then you become a Delta mind control slave, So when people are operating permanently in Delta, it's like that movie, Office Space, almost. Do you know that movie?
No, I don't know that one.
Oh, okay. It's a movie about a guy who he gets hypnotized by a hypnotherapist, and then the hypnotherapist dies during the session. And so he's permanently stuck in this like weird liminal state. But the reason why everyone is in this Delta state is because of our scroll culture. The scroll culture entrains us into being a passive, submissive, docile consumer of reality as opposed to being a conscious co-creator. So we're just kind of
Mm-hmm.
letting reality happen to us as opposed to stepping in and being like, no, I'm going to change this pattern. No, I'm going to do it this way, and taking control of the
Mm-hmm.
creative responsibility of one's
Mm-hmm.
reality, right? And so I was just like, okay, it's kind of scary to see that everyone's operating in Delta um, permanently.
Yeah.
And so then I went on a quest to try and see how we can get back into Alpha. And I was trying everything, tuning forks, meditations, and I had this one meditation, and the meditation was using a perfect fifth ratio, but what was really important about it was that something about the mechanism of like some configuration of effects that I didn't really intend to happen was creating an effect where the center point of the geometry was moving very, 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 very slowly across the screen. And that was just, like an artifact of the geometry. But I started just randomly doing this meditation where I would use my eyes and I would just say, okay, I'm going to use my eyes to follow this very slow moving point. And guess what? That exercise was able to get me out of Delta and back into Alpha.
Mm.
And then I showed a bunch of my friends, and the same thing happened to them. They were able to shift their brainwave frequencies into an alpha state or, some other state. And then I was like, okay, what is happening here? Like, why is this so powerful?
Mm-hmm.
And then I was showing a friend of mine and whose brainwaves were also able to shift. And then he's like, oh, I think it's the mechanism of the slow movement. Because when you have a part of your being that is basically hacking its normal perception of time, then that's when you start taking control of time, and everything that came before as a pattern doesn't have the power to move you into the next frame of reality. You're like taking back your perception of time by slowing down how you perceive time by moving slowly with your eyes, because where your eyes go is where your body goes. Where your eyes go, energy flows. The eyes are the
Mm-hmm.
gateway
Mm-hmm.
for energy transmission and for patterns that govern the movements of the whole body. So when you literally do this with, even if you're out in a park, if you do this one thing, if you just take your finger and you move very, very slowly and you follow it with your eyes, you are shifting your brain waves out of the unconscious brain back into the conscious, because you're hacking time. And that's almost the principle of qigong, is this slow movement, because you can also tap into the effect with slow breathing
Mm-hmm.
and with slow movement of any part of your body. And
Yeah,
I'm
I was
talking,
about to say that you could
yeah,
apply that also to like anything that you do slow, right? And also with the body will get you back probably into that state.
exactly. And it's a
Yeah.
secret hack of reality.
Mm-hmm. So we're all invited to slow down anyway, right? Also
Yes,
in
exactly.
general. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mm. Amazing.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, because it's like the slow movement. Well, it sounds like you're, lowering your frequency, but when you move slower, you're actually increasing your frequency. You're increasing your light quotient
Mm-hmm.
by
Mm-hmm.
concentrating it. and it's not leaking out as much.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's a psychedelic thing because we never do it, we're never like, okay, I'm just gonna move super super slow, and I'm talking super slow. And it
Hmm.
might be staccato at first, and that's okay. Just it'll smooth out eventually. So
Okay.
so yeah.
Curious to try it.
Yeah. So let's see, what else do we have here? um so yeah, so the ones in Ableton that I showed you were just basic sine tones. So that
Hmm.
was just two sine tones that was creating that epic geometry, which was the seed of light that I mentioned, which looks a lot like the seed of life. Most people wouldn't
Yeah.
even perceive a difference, but the
Hmm.
difference is actually that the seed of light has these what's called perpetual motion geometry. So it's elliptical orbital circuitry. These
Hmm.
elliptical orbital circuits are found in planetary orbits. Like the planetary orbit of Venus is an inverted 5 petal pentagonal flower shape.
Hmm.
So these cyclical, elliptical, perpetual motion geometries are really found in so many layers of reality. And they're also found in atomic spin. And there's a photo I had of electron microscope imagery of the behavior in the probability cloud of electrons for different elements. So I know that's a lot there, but so an electron has a probability cloud in its spin, and they photographed it with
Hmm.
electron microscopes. And guess what? They showed these probability clouds were in these like flower, shapes, that they were mirroring these planetary cycles of movement. So these
Yeah.
cyclical movements. So just start thinking about the infinity. So how the way that's a perpetual motion geometry. And then
Hmm.
you have the Trinity flower, so that's another one. And then yeah, just taking it up to each
Hmm.
geometry. These are the fundamental units of creation. These are called rose curves. So if you go to Wikipedia, you type in rose curves, you can read about the mathematical formulas and properties of the rose curves. And the rose curves were never mentioned in mainstream sacred geometry, although I personally think they're the most important and the most relevant mirrors of quantum and cosmic patterns of nature. And to start in training with these geometries is absolutely life changing.
Hmm.
And another way to entrain it, other than listening to it and visualizing it on the oscilloscope, is using your eyes to trace each one. This
Uh-huh.
is a powerful, powerful practice, and it ties into, the eye movement practice we just
Hmm.
talked about.
Hmm.
And I've been printing them out, these rose curves, and I'll put to start off. I'll literally draw points on the geometry so that my brain can start learning how
Mm.
to like how it's made, and then I like
Creating a
look.
sequence basically to follow, right?
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
just channel that this is a very important thing for me to do, and I will just go from point to point to point and trace the point in the perpetual motion geometrical shape. And eventually you can do it without the dots once
Hmm.
your brain starts learning how to do it. But then the next step, which is the most important and never to be forgotten, is now that you know that geometry really well through your consciousness, now you learn how to project it with
Mm.
your visualization faculties, which is like the greatest, you know, probably loss of our generation, because we're constantly looking at screens. We're constantly allowing imprints and projections to come from the outside, which is this delta epidemic that I mentioned. It's from the
Hmm.
screens that we're always projecting imagery from the outside, from the LCD screens, which have very specific types of light that is harsh on our retinas and on our third eye, because the
Mm.
third eye is actually supposed to be a projector, but people forgot how to project. We forgot how to visualize into reality, which is our greatest power, superpower as humans. And it's a
Hmm.
legitimate thing. It's like people think it's like woo woo, but I'm telling you, like, all this is going to be proved by science pretty soon, you know?
Yeah. Hmm.
And yeah, so starting with the geometries, learning how to visualize something by looking at it a lot and memorizing aspects of it, and then just trying, just making an effort to close your eyes and say, okay, I'm going to try to visualize that shape. And I'm going to try to visualize a circle, starting with the basics. And then that will
Hmm.
start the workout of in training to visualization and projecting one's reality.
And this will then have the same effect like shape power, right? Because it's basically then the geometry being projected into the ether in that sense, and then it will affect the manifestations and the reality. Is that the idea?
Exactly, exactly. And it's
Hmm.
a superpower that we just forgot, we forgot. And a lot of magicians talk about it. They would
Hmm.
even do the shape in the ether. Like
Yeah.
all magicians would work with the pentagram rituals, and they would use their hands to draw a pentagram, because when you
Hmm.
use your hand to mold the ether like that, you're literally imprinting that particular energetic quality into your field. And so the occultists like Aleister Crowley and all the occultists through time were working with the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram. And they would do this motion with an incantation of each of the angels in each direction. They would do it, yeah, in each direction, which is a powerful practice, because you're basically taking your own field and you're making sure all of the angles are protected with a coherent geometry. And when you do this, chaotic energy has a lower probability of infiltrating into your field. And so
Hmm.
there's like a science behind that particular protection ritual, and behind doing any sort of hand movements in general. They're creating a field. They're creating field effects that are measurable and scientifically proven. So it's about, oh, we can take our power back and we can create more protection, or we can create more expansion, and we have the power to choose in any moment
Hmm.
what energy we want to entrain with. And the geometries and understanding the fundamental principles inherent in each shape is just the beginning of taking our power back and becoming sovereign beings of our field, of our reality, not consenting to any sort of energy harvestation of any form. And yeah, that's the vibe.
Amazing. Wow, Sheila, that's super epic information. Thank you for sharing. Yes, totally. Back the power back to us, right? I mean, that's also what the Age of Aquarius is going to be about, right? The power goes back to the people, and the people get empowered again. We empower each other. We remember, we share, and then we realize how powerful we actually are, and yeah, become conscious creators, as you said, and shape the reality more cohesive, harmonious ways, and get rid of the chaos in that sense. Like, I mean, at least the fabricated chaos that is there to prevent us from tapping into those powers.
Exactly.
Hmm.
And we're here to remind each other, like you said, we're here to light each other's fire and
Hmm.
remind each other that we have the power. We have the power in any moment to shift the frequency from a fear based frequency to a love based frequency. We have
Hmm.
that power. And we're all on the journey here. Every single one of us has a trigger, a response to a situation that elicits fear or
Hmm.
the way I think of emotions these days is just a biophysical, biochemical emission from a gland of a hormone that secretes through our body. And if we just start understanding, the biophysical, biochemical process of the secretion of the hormones, we can start to learn how to become conscious emitters of the hormones. And it's not that hard to just start the process of developing a relationship and awareness of these processes. It's like we have an awareness of the chakras, right? So the 7 chakras, each chakra corresponds to a gland, right? The third eye would be the pineal gland, and then you have the thymus and the pancreas and the the ovaries, gonads, and every single gland is a secretor of a hormone, a hormonal cocktail. So, for example, the pineal gland secretes melatonin,
Mm-hmm.
and the adrenal glands secrete adrenaline and cortisol, and each one of the glands corresponds to that chakra system, because you have the sacral, which is the sexual organs, which is the testosterone and estrogen hormonal secretion. So the whole thing is every single person is on a mission right now to understand what triggers them, because the triggers are the leaks. The triggers are when energy, which is really just a tangible biochemical cocktail of hormonal emissions that oxidizes into our fields, that is how we leak energy indiscriminately, that keeps us away from our sovereignty and our power. And becoming, I think the first and most important is becoming aware of one's fears. So when someone can know, like, what are my fears, and then starting the process of confronting one's fears is like the baseline of mastery. If one is on the path of mastery, find out your triggers, find out what generates adrenaline secretion in your body. And I would say exposure therapy is the best way to diminish a fear. Exposure therapy meaning talking about a trauma that created that fear, or talking about the feelings that come up, and never dwelling in it, always talking about it with the purpose of diminishing its charge, not amplifying its charge. And that is, number one. And all these practices, like the meditation, it can really help to ease a lot of these, secretions or triggers, and it can help one get into a calm and focused state. But it's never a replacement for someone doing the inner work and going into their inner child, finding the traumas, finding those points that created that distortion in the field. And there's a really cool sound healing practice that I learned from Eileen Day McCusick from her book, which is so incredible. And she talks about the practice of taking a tuning fork, walking around someone's body and listening to the tuning fork very closely, and finding distortions in someone's field, in the purity of the signal of the tuning fork. And if I'd never read her book, I probably never would have listened, because it's very, very, very subtle. You have to really listen. But if you take a tuning fork in a specific bandwidth, and then you basically do a scan around somebody, you can literally find parts of them that are blocked or don't have a lot of energy or chi flowing into that area for whatever reason. And I started finding some of my own blocks And when I first was finding them, a lot of people have some around the head. So there's parts around the head that are like, it's like a dead zone. It's a dead spot. So either when you put the tuning fork around it, either the sound will either go completely silent, or it will get a little bit of a ring or distortion, like subtle distortion sound in that spot. And when I first did it on myself, I found a couple spots on my head where the tuning fork would just go silent. And then I thought, oh, maybe it's the shape of my ear that's creating this effect. Like, this is too weird. So then I asked a friend, I was like, can you verify this for me? Like, is this tuning fork really going quiet on this one spot? Or is it just my ear shape that's making that? And they verified it. They're like, yeah, it's really going quiet right there. And I was like, oh my gosh, like that is a trippy diagnostic practice. And
Yeah.
the antidote is holding the tuning fork in that spot. And then not only that, but putting the tuning fork in that spot and trying to perceive it. I know it sounds weird, but like paying attention, trying to hear it, because it means like that's an energetic dead zone that your field of perception is blocked. And so if you hold a tuning fork in that spot and then you like try and listen, you try to hear that quiet frequency, that process of hearing it is going to feed back and then create like a louder tone and a louder field of energy in that spot. And an interesting thing about that is that different bandwidths might be blocked and other bandwidths might be have a perfect field effect. Like I had a block in this like 300 to 200 to 300 range around my head. But then when I had like 500 to 600, it was perfectly loud. So, and then I would do it
so
on
there's
a
also
few.
differences in frequency as well.
Exactly. And that is something for everyone should become more aware of. And I did some tuning forks on a friend, and she had a huge block in the 3000 hertz range in this one spot on her head, huge block. And then I didn't have any of the blocks in that bandwidth in my head. So then I just was holding it on her head, and I told her she needed to continue to use the tuning fork on that spot and to do practices like tapping to get the energy and the chi flowing more into that spot. And yeah, like so tuning forks are a powerful diagnostic tool. But the next thing I've been tapping into so recently that is so freaking exciting, and I feel like it's one of the most important practices of all time, is the vocal toning. And the vocal toning is absolute powerhouse of creating internal coherence. So we can do all these things and look at all these geometries and meditate to them and imprint them in different ways, but nothing beats the practice of vocal toning to create inner coherence and harmony. Vocal toning is opening up the gates, unlocking the gates of energy to flow through the body, period. And of course, there's literally thousands of different sounds, words, incantations from Sanskrit, Hebrew, names of angels, names of God. There's so many different things that we can resonate through our body that each will open up a different gate and path of energy and resonance chamber and energetic signature and biochemical reaction in our body. We're chemists, we're alchemists, and our sounds are creating alchemical biophysical reactions. And the English language, sadly, is a language that administers a very low amount of shifts in the body by the pure tonal resonance chambers resonances alone.
Yeah.
And it's functional because you can convey information in a very heady way, you know, without involving the visceral states. You know, like you have some languages that will use like the gut and the throat and the head in ways English doesn't really use. English is based in the mouth and the head. That's it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And yeah, in some ways that's good because then people can be more casual with words because the words aren't going to change much in reality.
Yeah.
And most
Which is
people,
also a good thing probably for now also, right?
exactly, because it's a bit responsibility. So
Exactly.
it was almost like humans were not conscious enough to understand their power, and they would wield these words with, you know, casuality that would wreck and destroy universes, you know? So
Mm-hmm.
it's almost a
Mm-hmm.
protection mechanism. We're like, okay, here's a safe language you can use for now until you develop your consciousness enough to deserve the power words that are gonna really shift reality, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So it's
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, a lot of us are, you know, we're learning the lessons, and we're like, okay, we're ready to take on some more power to influence reality. And let me tell you, like I said before, the more conscious you become, the more things around you are going to shift so quickly, and the more you have to dissolve anything that is creating a low vibrational situation. Like if someone comes into your field and starts, you know, being really negative and like talking and like playing all these negative videos, and if you entrain with that video, you might actually have a situation in your life where that video they showed you plays out. So it's
Mm-hmm.
like you got to be really protective of your field when you're in that conscious co-creator zone of reality. Like it's scary, and it's lonely too. But
Mm-hmm.
but but yeah, so the toning is a basic metaphor for a radio. So for people who are into the science of radios, there are three components: the transmitter, or sorry, we'll start with the carrier wave.
Mm-hmm.
The carrier wave is the sine tone that a radio uses to carry a signal. So if you tune your radio station to 106.5 FM, that is 106.5 megahertz, which is 106,500,000 hertz. Pure sine tone. And that is a signal that a radio station literally buys. So, which is another invasive aspect of reality. Someone's literally buying a part of your frequency, your
Yeah.
field, which is, that's an abomination to me already,
Uh-huh.
you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the radio would emanate at that particular frequency. So that's carrier wave, number one. Number two is transmission. And the transmission is in the form of the radio metaphor, it will be a song or an announcement. And so how a radio functions is the carrier wave and the transmission are compressed together. The signal is compressed. Then that signal is sent out from a transmitter antenna, and then it's received from a receiver antenna. The receiver now separates the signal, the carrier wave, from the transmission, and then delivers you your beautiful radio songs. And so this is the metaphor that people can use to realize every single one of us is a human radio.
Mm-hmm.
And when you entrain to the practice of vocal toning, you have the power to become a human radio, to program the Akashic field with your message, intention, affirmation, or what is it? And I'm
Mm.
telling you, this is scary. This the level of how much this works is scary.
Mm-hmm.
And like the second I started doing it, like the first thing I put into the field immediately was brought into my field in some way, that where there's an
Yeah.
energetic path where that can come through.
Mm-hmm.
So the way that this works is I would say first getting either a tuning fork or a toner app. I think a frequency app called
Yeah.
ToneGen. ToneGen is a free app on the App Store, and it allows you to dial in any frequency, and it will play a pure sine tone.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say you want to play 333. It would play that sine tone, which just sounds like a beeping noise. And then you would try to match the tone with your voice. And I believe in starting with the O sound. And there's, like I said, a million possibilities. I would tell everyone to start with vowels. And the first vowel I would recommend would be O. The reason I would choose O is because the letter O is the closest to creating a pure sine tone. Because this pure sine tone literally creates the letter O in an oscilloscope. And when you say the letter O, your whole internal architecture is resonating this shape, not only the sound O, but the shape O, which is very interesting. It's one of the few symbiotic letters in the English alphabet that where the oscilloscope imagery is also the same as the sound generating it. Whereas in Sanskrit and Hebrew, all of the letters are oscilloscope renderings of the sound that makes that shape. So yeah, O is one of the few English ones we have. So
Okay.
I
More
always
like
start with
universal, probably, right?
what's that?
It's more universal, probably, the O in general. Like,
Yeah, totally. And yeah, so I would start with the O. And so first you get the frequency, you generate the sine tone, and then you try to match it by saying oh. And there's a number of ways one can monitor the quality with a feedback tool, which will help in strengthening the quality when you can see yourself. You know, it's like a feedback effect, like looking in a mirror, adjusting your posture, sitting up straighter. You know, it's like when you can see the feedback of a situation, you can adjust it. And so the easiest one I recommend would be another free app called In-Track Tuner. And that one is pretty cool because it lets you see the frequency of whatever frequency is being input into it. In Ableton, you can use a tuner app. So I just go to audio effects and then I grab the tuner. So the tuner, and then I would hit hertz here. So as you can see here, I can see my vocal range, which is about, 150 to 200. So that's a very interesting feedback tool. And the next feedback tool would be an oscilloscope. And the oscilloscope will enable you to see the geometry as well. And I'll show you that in just a second. But before I do, I'll just tell you the last step of becoming a human radio, which is imprinting your intention. So again, like a radio, you have the carrier wave. Woo! Now what you're going to do is you have a transmission. You have a transmission that you are going to repeatedly think about over and over again, like a mantra. It could be literally anything, of course, harm to none, for the good and healing of all. And you think about it over and over again. It could be, something random, like, I want a smoothie, you know, and you say, I want a green juice. And then
Uh-huh.
of course you probably want to, manifest some higher, it could be anything. But yeah,
Yeah.
I resonate eternal love and compassion,
Mm. Mm-hmm.
starting with
Mm-hmm.
just the principles of love is the best place to start, because that will
Mm-hmm.
give you whatever you need, really. So
Yeah.
saying like the mantra, I am love, that's like my
Mm-hmm.
favorite mantra of all time.
Mm-hmm.
And I am happy, I am abundant. All of these things are great mantras one could use to encode into this transmission carrier wave signal.
So while you're chanting, you think that in a loop basically, or you project that into the wave while you're chanting.
Yes.
Yeah.
And this is something that is not easy to do for the first timer,
Yeah.
because there was a class that I took on Vedic meditation, and that is nowadays I think people refer to the newer trademarked version as TM,
Oh yeah.
Transcendental Meditation.
Mm-hmm.
So that is based off of ancient Vedic meditation, which is in all of the scriptures, and they were teaching people how to have a coherent thought transmission. And this is like probably the most important aspect of Vedic meditation, learning how to have a coherent thought, because most of us, we struggle, we're doing the work, but okay, so here is the practice. So choose your mantra or choose your affirmation. So the first thing you do is you go outside, preferably into nature, and where no one's going to hear you, and then you shout it. You literally shout the mantra
Mm-hmm.
with a high amplitude, high voltage, high energy. You shout it and you feel it, of course. You try to feel it, even if it doesn't feel natural. You try to embody the feeling of whatever you're saying, which is like probably the most important aspect. But yeah, so you feel it, you shout it. And this is the actual teaching, is like an hour of this meditation, not of shouting, but the whole process would be, you shout it first. When you shout it, you visualize your voice, your power reflecting off every single surface in your surroundings, every tree, every wall, every, you can do it in your room, and then it's like every wall, you just visualize a 360 degrees output of that energy emanating through every cell of your body. So it's like a little bit of a visualization. And then once you have that, you're imprinting your field with your own voice, your own energy, your own intention. So you do that, you shout it a few times, and then the rest of the practice involves slowly lowering the volume. So
Mm-hmm.
you do loud, and then you visualize, okay, now I'm going to take it in a little bit, a few notches down, and then you speak that mantra a little bit lower. So you're programming each layer of voltage, which is a trip to think about, because it's like there's all these different layers, and you have the power to program all the layers based on the voltage and the pressure. Your pressure determines the distance that your voice travels, and you have the
Mm-hmm.
voltage to push out pressure. So when you speak softly, it's only influencing a very small distance around you. It's only
Mm-hmm.
creating an
Mm-hmm.
oscilloscope molding of the ether in a very specified distance of the pressure waves traveling based on the voltage that you are wielding. And then you slowly go down in volume, slowly. So you start shouting lower, 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 lower. And again, this process takes like an hour. And when you get to a whisper, then you do that a few times. Whisper, whisper, whisper. And then it gets so quiet that it becomes just a thought. And that thought is going to have so much momentum and so much power that it is unbreakable. No other thought can come through and distract the momentum and the wheel and the force that you just built up and encoded into that incantation. So that little instruction was a nested instruction inside another instruction set. So I hope it's not getting too complicated. That would be like how to entrain yourself to having a more coherent thought or intention. So once you have that down and you can think a coherent thought in your head without articulating it, now you save the articulation for the pure sine tone carrier wave that is going to now more deeply imprint the collective Akashic field in that particular bandwidth. So I know it's complex.
Okay, so this is basically the preparation for it. Like the 1 hour process is the preparation to be able to have a consistent thought, and then once we are there, then we can start becoming the radio and then actually modulating signals with that consistent thought.
Exactly. And it's insanely powerful practice to go through all of that, and yeah, it's next level. But yeah, so I'm going to give you a little demonstration now on Ableton of what that looks like. And I honestly don't do this that often, so I don't have the most coherent geometrical waveform, but you would be so surprised if you just did this for 5 minutes. From the first minute to the 5th minute, the 5th minute, our body adjusts itself and does the corrections very quickly. We become coherent internally. It doesn't take a lot of time, but I'll just do it for like, less than a minute, for like 30 seconds, and I'll show you what it looks like. And I'll try to do 432 hertz just because that is one that I really like. So
so that's the one that you use as a reference also for like this human radio thing, or
right. So I would recommend that for the actual frequencies, that if I had to choose, I'd probably choose the major scale from the 432 just intonation tuning system, because that encapsulates all of the ratios, which are like nutrients that your body needs.
Yeah, that's also the scale I use for sound journeys and anything that I produce in that sense. It's so fun.
Yeah, I would honestly recommend that. But what's really important is, like, if someone's really just a beginner and wants to get a feel for a diagnostic of where they're at, I would recommend like maybe going through each bandwidth and trying to tone with, you could start with like 111 and then do 222 and then do 333 and 444 or 555, and maybe try something simple like that, and then see, oh wow, like my 111 is just, I can't even hit the note, it's so distorted. Like anyone who has, and there's a correspondence between the chakras or the glands, and anyone who has like some low frequency distortions probably has root chakra issues, and that will create maybe money issues and certain aspects of reality that will show up if that particular bandwidth is not in tune. And if anyone's interested in learning more about that, I would look up like Voice Analysis Harmony, VAH. It's a software where you diagnose your chakra imbalances based off of your voice and where you have these dead spots in your vocal range. So if someone's missing a frequency in their vocal range, they may have a chakra imbalance in the corresponding chakra. And I did that practice on myself, and it was 100% accurate. It was like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, you're missing these, like, root chakra frequencies. That must mean that you have these issues. And I was like 100% spot on
Mm-hmm.
the diagnostic. And then
Okay.
the you know the prescription they gave me was to tone that frequency, which was the C harmonic. They're like, if you tone that frequency and imprint your intentions to heal those things, you will see results, guaranteed, 100,000%. Your reality will reflect that integration of that missing harmonic. And so it's just such a powerful practice. And that software is, probably like $1,000 or something, but you don't even need it. You just, all you need is a tuner app in your phone, and then you
Mm-hmm.
can see how pure each one of these bandwidths are, and then you know where you need to work.
Exactly, because you can look at
Yeah,
the scale and see which frequency relates to which chakra, right? And then you could like make conclusions on, okay, so then as you said, the C is related to the root chakra. So if I don't hit the C correctly, or if it's super challenging, then that chakra needs to be worked on, all the issues regarding that chakra.
exactly. So these are
Oh,
DIY, do it yourself healing tools
awesome.
that are free, that anyone
Mm-hmm.
could use, that employ, little bits of technology as a feedback tool.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so then again, the vowels are super, super, super important. Each vowel is a different electromagnetic signature. Each vowel opens up the primary gates, unlocks the primary gates. And when I say vowels, I'm talking about not only the five, A, E, I, O, U, but break those down into two of each, the long and the short sound.
Mm.
So now you have 10 vowels. And there are more, but starting with the 10 is the most important. And the 10 would be, so for A, you would have ah, and you would
Mm-hmm.
also have ah. So two different versions. And there's more, but just starting with two for each vowel. Then you have, for E, you have E, and then you have the short eh. Then you have the O, which would be like oh, and then you have oo, ooh, which again, the ooh is the sign tone that I think is the most important to start with. And then you have I, so I, or IH would be the short. And then you have you, which would be you, or the short version, UH. So those are the
Okay.
10 that open up the gates. Those 10. And just doing them in one's natural frequency without even looking at a tuner is gonna be enough to
Yeah.
start the process of opening energy in just your natural range. But then using the tuner, you can start fine tuning each bandwidth, which is important practice. So yeah, I'm gonna do the O sound. I'm gonna open up the oscilloscope, and I'll show you what that might look like. So
Mm-hmm.
here we go.
fascinating.
Alrighty. So I can already feel the gates opening up. Like
Uh-huh.
for me, I can feel that in my chest, in my heart, and my nasal passageway. I feel openings. I feel energy moving, and if you do it even just for a moment, it totally changes someone's voice. Even their voice
Yeah.
becomes fuller, and resonance chambers open up that were closed.
Mm-hmm.
So if I was to do that for like 5 more minutes, then that geometry would just be getting more and more coherent, more and more circular, and it again happens so quickly.
So that would be the goal then, like in terms of improving, like we would aim for more coherence in the geometry.
Mm-hmm.
This would signal that we, yeah, more closer to harmonic resonance with the tone.
Exactly. It means that the like a water hose, you know, when there's a water hose, if there's like a little kink, if
Mm-hmm.
it's flipped around, the paths of sound are just opening up the kinks. They're clearing those
Mm-hmm.
kinks in the water hose.
Mm-hmm.
And when there's a kink, that's where energy can leak out and get blocked. So we want to get rid of the blocks and have energy flowing smoothly so we can be the highest level conductors of energy without things getting stuck and blocked. And yeah, that's what I think.
That's so amazing, Sheila. You shared so many powerful tools with us. That's incredible. So, like, really, we can go on the path of becoming a Jedi if people actually apply that. And I'm also super curious to apply that, especially like also the toning
Mm-hmm.
with the oscilloscope. But also, like, I'm at a place close to a waterfall, so I can just scream. I was just thinking when you were saying, like, yeah, you start by screaming, you know, whatever mantra or like whatever entrainment, cohesive thought you want to have. And I was like, imagine someone screaming, like, I am lost, you know, like that would be such a funny encounter, you know, like, it's like, why are you screaming? But yeah, it makes sense. Wait and see.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
Yeah, epic.
Yeah. And
All right. Mm-hmm.
while I was doing that last vocal toning exercises, I was trying my best to have that coherent thought as well and imprint
Mm-hmm.
it
Mm-hmm.
into the geometry.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Wow. What a journey. I mean, I feel it's so rich and so dense and high quality information and really empowering sharing. So thank you so much for opening up this treasure box. Like you're like getting us informed and excited about our own power that we have with the voice and the frequencies and our thoughts and how yeah we can tap into this more deeply.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I feel we could go on forever, but at the same time, we already like at 90 minutes, right? So,
Yeah.
is there anything else that you would like to share? Maybe like where people can find you or like what you're currently excited about or working on, or
Yeah. So,
you have a YouTube channel, right? Like a new
yeah.
one?
Yeah. So I just started a new one like a month
Mm-hmm.
ago or two.
Mm-hmm.
And that is what I am most excited about. Because what I'm
Mm-hmm.
most excited about is doing this, is sharing the knowledge, sharing the information, and motivating each other to step into the most powerful versions of ourselves. And we're all, you know, Jedis in training. We're all a work in
Mm-hmm.
progress. And the more we talk
Mm-hmm.
about it, the more I talk about it, the more it motivates me to do the practices too.
Yeah.
And it spreads. So yeah, my new YouTube is
Yeah.
Zatheria.
Maybe we should make a retreat one day. What do you think? Like, Jedi training, and then we just put all together all the practices, and then we
Totally.
really actually do it and see what happens. That will be
Yes.
amazing, no?
Yes. I would love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's talk about this another time. But yeah, that's
Yeah.
actually something that came to me that could be awesome. Either you
Mm-hmm.
come to Costa Rica or I come to Sedona, and then
Yes. Sounds wonderful.
yeah, amazing.
Oh my goodness. Well, thank you so much for having me. I am so
Mm,
grateful for you, for creating a space where I can share all of this information. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
so grateful at how receptive you are
Mm.
to receiving all these transmissions. So thank you so much.
You're so welcome. Like this conversation was probably like one of the most amazing I had the whole year, you know. And I say that with every class also we had. And again, I'm just in awe and so grateful and need to rewatch it and you know like create like little steps to action. But yeah, I'm super grateful that you exist, that you do this work, that you share this with us, and yeah, can only hope and wish for that people actually apply this because what you just shared for free is just like yeah the key to freedom and empowerment and becoming an embodied yeah creator and limitless manifester,
Right.
reality shaper,
Mm-hmm.
frequency modulator.
Mm-hmm.
All right,
Oh,
Sheila,
okay. Well, take
amazing.
care.
Yeah, thank you so much. And yeah, we talk soon. Much love to
Yes.
Sedona.
Much love. Bye bye.
Bye.
Bye.